I am Kristin Hogue, and I am the mother of Alexandria Villaseñor. And first of all, I wanted to talk about being a mother, because this is a Mother's Day rally, and we're talking about the repoliticization of Mother's Day.
Yes.
And so I just wanted to give you a little bit of information about myself as a mother. Alexandria is actually the youngest of 5 children. Wow. So I have a 25-year-old, a 23-year-old, a 21-year-old, a 19-year-old, and then, 6 years later, a 13-year-old. And, being a mother of 5 children, I've done a lot of advocating for my children, a lot of actual political work. I've advocated for my children in the school system. I've advocated for my children. I have a child with a disability, and I've advocated in the disabilities system and in the education system. I've advocated for an ill child in the healthcare system. And so I wanted to just briefly recall, there's a famous 1970 essay by Carol Hanisch, and she's a feminist, and her essay was, "The Personal is Political." And her essay acknowledges the connection between our personal experience and larger social and political structures. And when you look at the work that mothers do, being a mother is a political experience. And so now, as I've gone to graduate school, I've taken on like the biggest advocate for my child as a mother. And I'm advocating for my child with the climate. Sort of the largest structure that I've had to advocate for my child in. And just a couple more things about climate, because I study climate change at Columbia University, and I wanted to talk about how climate it's really close to our families, it's close to our children, it's closer than we think. And we really need to begin to look at climate as a living structure. And looking at climate as, a member of the family. And for example, when we have a family member who's ill, we teach our child how to care for that family member. And we explain the illness to our child. And the climate system is no different. The climate, it's right under our feet every day. It's the air that we breathe. And that family member is ill. And when a person is really ill, their organs, they begin to shut down. And that's what we're seeing in the climate system right now. We're seeing the dissolution of our jet stream. We're seeing the melting of our cryosphere. We're seeing the slowing of our Atlantic meridional overturning circulation, which is the conveyor belt for our oceans. So each of these Earth systems, it's like an organ for the planet that has become ill. And it's our responsibility as mothers to teach our children to care for this ill family member that the climate system is. And finally, I wanted to address the elephant in the room. And that is, every single reporter or journalist asks me, because I'm in climate, they say, "Did you put your daughter up to this?" And I wanted to say yes. I absolutely did. And I actually wanted to challenge all of you. I wanted to challenge all of you, and I wanted to point out to all of the mothers in the room how all of you are also putting your children up to this. Every time you encourage your child to sacrifice their time to care for someone less fortunate than themselves, you're teaching your child how to be an activist. When you teach your child to stand up for truth, when you teach your child to have integrity, you are teaching your child how to be an activist. And when you teach your child to stand for those in oppressed and marginalized communities when they can't stand for themselves, you are teaching your child how to be an activist. So I think all mothers are responsible for making their children activists just in the parenting process. So now I'd like to introduce my daughter. And Alexandria is 13 years old, and she's in the 7th grade. And we only moved to New York City last August, and she moved with me to attend graduate school. And she's actually attended some graduate school with me because I have classes in the afternoon. And I said, you have to go and sit in the back of my class. You can't stay home alone in that apartment. So she would sit in the back of the class in like thermodynamics. And I didn't know if she, how much she was paying attention, but obviously she was. And then there was that fateful day in December when she just got mad, and she says, I'm going to go on strike. It was December 14th. It's the last day of COP24, and I laughed, and both of us thought that this was cute, that maybe she'd write an essay about it and then move on with her life. Neither one of us thought it would get as much attention as it has gotten, and we certainly didn't think that the movement would grow to the place that it's grown. And so now, she's doing some amazing work, so she'll be with me, and she'll be texting and organizing and emailing, and I'm like, sweetheart, you have to eat. Sweetheart, it's time for bed. It's like 2 a.m. and she says, no, it's 2 a.m. I have to call Australia. So that's sort of what our life has become, and she has she's won some really great awards. She was honored at the Tribeca Film Festival with their Disruptor Award this year. She's accepting the Common Good Foundation's Changemaker Award. She was recognized on Political's list of top 100 people influential in climate policy. And then we'll be back in Washington, D.C. on May 14th, where she will accept the Earth Day Network's Youth Leadership Award for 2019. And this all, as a mom, this all makes me very proud. And, but I still call her little one. And so with that, I'd like to introduce my daughter and hand it over to Alexandria Villaseñor.
Okay, I do have to say though, she's been amazing. As a teenager, your sleep schedule's already crazy with school. So can you imagine having to get up to go to one of these meetings, going to an organization meeting or something at like 7 a.m. and so you have to set your alarm, but yet you're too lazy to get up and your mom's there waking you up because you have to go speak somewhere. It's quite an experience, so thank you, Mom. So I guess you guys already know, but my name is Alexandria Villaseñor, and I'm a 13-year-old climate activist, and I've been on climate strike for 21 weeks now in solidarity with Swedish climate activist Greta Thunberg.
All right.
So for months now, students all over the world have stepped up to take responsibility for climate in action. But we shouldn't have to do this. If adults in power did their job, then we wouldn't really be in a climate emergency. And young people like me wouldn't have to worry about our future. When I moved to New York City last August, I pictured myself taking walks through Central Park, exploring museums, having a magical holiday season in the greatest city in the world. Now, that all sounds very boring now, of course. I didn't really intend to become a climate activist, but then last November, I visited family back in Northern California, where I was born and raised, and during my trip, the Paradise Fire broke out, and quickly became the worst wildfire in California history. 250 square miles burned, thousands of homes were destroyed, and many people died. To protect my health, my family sent me back to New York City early. When I returned, I researched the effects of climate change, and I learned of Greta Thunberg. Last September, Greta began striking outside the Swedish parliament demanding action from world leaders on climate change. On December 14th, I joined her and began my own climate strike in front of the United Nations headquarters. Through social media, I soon learned of other students striking for climate, and before we knew it, we were organizing together the largest global climate protest in history. On March 15th, 1.6 million students in over 125 countries school striked for climate, demanding action from their world leaders. A lot of people ask me what the difference is between the youth climate movement in Europe and the youth climate movement here. And what I have to say to that is it's complicated. Personally, I noticed it was difficult to mobilize students to strike in really large numbers, and I didn't know why. First, people in the United States are less secure than those in many European countries. With the healthcare tied to their employment and little or no paid leave, people in the United States don't have the same opportunities for activism as they do in other countries. Our media also doesn't address climate change the same way as in other countries. Here in America, some of our media gives equal time and consideration to what they say is both sides of the climate debate. Our media sometimes gives a platform to climate deniers. I had the honor to be on a panel at the Columbia School of Journalism last week, where they were discussing why the media wasn't taking on the responsibility to report the facts about climate change. I told them the problem with the media is the same thing that's the problem with the fossil fuel industries. It's all for profit. But the climate crisis is real, and it's not for clickbait. I also realized the key was education. Climate change education isn't taught as much as it should be. So, to address this problem, I just announced my own startup nonprofit called Earth Uprising. Earth Uprising will teach students about climate change and help them mobilize to take direct action. And part of Earth Uprising is also about working with our adult allies. The youth movement's greatest asset is our adult allies. They can help support us, protect us, and advocate for us. And it's because of those allies and our friends and our family too that we can't ever give up. The rally here doesn't end today, and we must do whatever it takes to force our leaders and policymakers to listen to science and the scientists. The youth movement intends to mobilize in greater numbers than ever seen before in history, and we need everyone to be with us. Now, as a student growing up in this planet, I have a future for the future. I see a world where human beings live in harmony with the earth, respecting the boundaries of this planet that we call our home. I see a stable climate system where fossil fuels are kept in the ground and their emissions are zero. I see reforestation, ocean cleanup, habitat restoration, an end to pollution, sustainable food systems, and renewable energy. We have to start imagining a new future now in order to make it come true. Like I said before, on March 15th, 1.6 million students in over 125 countries went on school strike. And our next global climate strike is on May 24th. We're coming back bigger, better, and more demanding than we ever have been before. As Greta Thunberg says, change is coming whether you like it or not. And thanks to science, the youth will not be stopped. Before I go, I want to lead you in a chant, as we always do at our climate strikes. So when I say our future, I want you to respond with our earth. Okay? Our future? Our earth! Our future? Our earth! Our future? Our earth! Woo! Let's just say I'm much more comfortable at protests. It's now like my home space.